हेलो।
है साथ क्या हाल भाई।
ठीक आप सुना।
गुड। तो लेट्स स्टार्ट विथ यस्टरडेज टॉपिक। आप एक बार स्क्रीन शेयर करोगे आपका यस्टरडेज वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट। लेट्स कवर दैट फर्स्ट एंड देन विल स्टार्ट विथ द इन्वेंटरी।
I wanted to ask that allowance for doubtful account, what kind of account it is?
आप बताओ।
Uh, Contra revenue? No.
व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ अलाउंस? अलाउंस वर्ड होता है तो वो अकाउंट्स कौन से होते हैं? Allowance for doubtful debt is a balance sheet account. It's a contra asset or a liability account. It's just like provision for doubtful debt. उसका दूसरा नाम है bad debt allowance और CCL allowance.
And when we are reversing return of account, then I wasn't able to
Sorry, what you are
understand the entry.
reversing? Sorry. What you are reversing?
Something that we wrote off, but now we are reversing
Why you are reversing?
because now they're gonna pay.
Okay, subsequent recovery. Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't understand the entry. So
So it's a
why
reversal of your bad debt. What is the entry when you do the write-off?
uh, credit accounts receivable,
Hmm.
debit allowance for doubtful account?
Exactly. So you have to reverse the entry when you subsequently collect. So your entry is accounts receivable debit to allowance. And then when you collect the money, cash account debit to accounts receivable.
So why is allowance for doubtful account being debited?
Because that is the account that was used to write off the accounts receivable.
When we write off, it gets debited or it gets credited?
आप बताओ entry when it gets write off, what is the journal entry?
It gets debited, but isn't how is our liability decreasing?
चलिए गूगल शीट ओपन कीजिए, स्क्रीन शेयर कीजिए, लेट्स गेट द फंडामेंटल्स राइट। सो
Can you see?
ओपन ऑन ब्लैंक शीट। लेट्स आई एम गिविंग यू अ ट्रांजैक्शंस, आप उसके एंट्रीज बनाइए। ऑन फर्स्ट ऑफ मे इनवॉइसिंग इज सेंट फॉर $10,000। on 3rd of May money is on 3rd of May the services are delivered.
Wait, invoice sent.
Invoice sent on 1st of May for $10,000. Services are delivered on 3rd of May. On balance sheet date, which is 12/31, the money is not collected. So you create a 25% bad debt provision. Next year, on 3rd of February, customer paid 75% and 25% should be written off. Customer paid 75% and 25% should be written off. On 6th of June next year, customer subsequently paid balance 25% also. Paid balance 25% also. What I want you to do is every transaction write down the entry. Prepare 12/31 balance sheet for year 1, 12/31 balance sheet for year 2. So आप एक बार करो, उसके बाद हम कॉन्सेप्ट को टेस्ट करते हैं. So when invoicing is sent, accounts receivable to deferred, when services are delivered, deferred to revenue. 1231 money is not collected, so bad debt expense debit to allowance for doubtful debt. Okay. Now hold on. 1231 पहले balance sheet बनाओ, then we'll go to next year journal entry. What is the
वो
presentation and what is the allowance for doubtful debt? वो account को आपने credit क्यों किया?
बैलेंस शीट किस तरह बनाऊं as in
Hmm? Sorry?
what do you mean make the balance sheet?
Make the balance sheet, how balance sheet will look like how accounts receivable will be presented in the balance sheet.
The final balance,
Yes, how you will present accounts receivable in the balance sheet.
the debit accounts receivable 10,000.
Okay. So what is the logic for 1231 entry? Can you explain me the journal entry bad debt expense debit to allowance credit? What is A is equal to C plus L? What is happening?
Uh, our accounts receivable is t-
Okay, forget A
our
is equal to C plus
our
L. Just
our
explain me the
re-
entry.
our revenue is decreasing because of expenses. That's why it's debited.
Come again, फिर से बोलो.
We are our revenue is decreasing, so we are
So why
expensive
you have not debited revenue?
because uh,
If you are saying revenue is decreasing, then you should debit the revenue. Why you have not debited revenue?
our capital is decreasing,
Sorry, our
equity is decreasing.
okay, equity is decreasing. But my again question is explain me the entry debit and credit. Why you use bad debt expense? First question. Second, why you use allowance for doubtful debt? Third, bad debt expense goes where into your financial statement. Fourth, allowance for doubtful debt, where it goes to your financial statement. So I just wanted to understand why you debited something, why you credited something.
Bad debt expense goes to income statement. Allowance for doubtful account goes to the balance sheet.
Okay, where in balance sheet?
Uh, asset
Asset का क्या balance होता है?
debit, but this is a contra asset.
Okay, so it's not an asset, it's a contra asset. You have to use the words carefully. ठीक है. So your first answer is right. The debt expense income statement, allowance contra asset. Now my question is why bad debt expense debit? Why contra asset is credited?
Uh, no, that I don't know. That's what I was asking.
चलिए, what is the matching principle?
That we will record the expense on the year it happens,
We will record the expense.
on the period, on the revenues related on the year of that.
Okay. So this 2500 bad debt expense pertains to which period of revenue?
The 10,000 for year one,
Which period? Year one, year two.
year one.
So year one, you earned a revenue of $10,000. Now there is a risk that customer may not pay in future. So it is not bad debt yet. You anticipate that customer may not pay in future. But what matching principle says that you have to record the expense in the year in which a related revenue is generated. So revenue is generated in year one. So even though there is no actual write-off, actual bankruptcy, bad debt expense, actual write-off has not taken place. But because related revenue is recorded in year one, you record bad debt expense also in year one, even though it's not the actual write off. So, are you first of all clear why you debit bad debt expense income statement account? It is because of
In
your fundamental matching principle.
okay, but in the A equals to C plus L, what we would say?
A is equal to C plus L पे बाद में आता है. First, are you clear with why you debit bad debt expense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why you credit allowance for doubtful debt? So, allowance for doubtful debt is your contra asset. It's your contra accounts receivable. So, accounts receivable is presented at net realizable value. So at the inception of the transaction, you have an accounts receivable of $10,000. But on the balance sheet date 12/31, your net realizable value for this account is only 7,500. So you have to reduce your accounts receivable by 2,500. And hence you credit your contra asset, which is nothing but a reduction of your asset. And you bring down your accounts receivable to a 7,500. So how balance sheet will look like for 12/31? There will be accounts receivable $10,000 minus allowance for doubtful debt 2,500. Net accounts receivable, which goes into your final balance sheet, will be $7,500. So clear with the journal entry first of all.
Yes.
चलिए A इज इक्वल टू सी प्लस एल. फर्स्ट आप ट्राई करो कि क्या हो रहा है. या असेट ऊपर नीचे होगी, या लायबिलिटी ऊपर नीचे होगी, या इक्विटी ऊपर नीचे होगी. सो जस्ट थिंक थ्रू कि कौन सा अकाउंट कौन से सेक्शन को हिट कर रहा है.
For allowance for doubtful account, our asset is decreasing, so it's crediting.
पहले बैड डेट एक्सपेंस पे आता है. व्हाट इज द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ डेबिटिंग बैड डेट एक्सपेंस?
Our equity is decreasing.
Perfect. Your equity goes down. Why? Because expense increase, so income goes down. Net profit goes down, so your retained earnings goes down. Your equity goes down. So first is right. Now, what is happening because of you decrease your asset? So, allowance for doubtful accounts, it's nothing but your contra asset, which means a reduction of your asset. So, equity is going down. Also, your asset is also going down. So, A is equal to C plus L. What is the equation? Asset goes down is equal to capital or equity goes down plus unchanged liability. यहाँ तक clear है first three entries?
Yes.
Chaliye, now let's see what happens on 3rd of Feb. So you get a cash of 75%. So you collect cash 7,500. You credit accounts receivable by full $10,000. Now why you have debited 2,500 allowance for doubtful debt?
Mm, because we're writing it off.
Yes, this is the actual write-off. But is it going to your P&L or is it going to your balance sheet?
Balance sheet.
Balance sheet. Why not P&L?
Because it's not expense.
No, that's not the right answer. Because the related revenue was generated in year one. So you have already recorded expense in year one through the provision. So what is your 12/31 entry? Bad debt expense to allowance for doubtful debt. So on 12/31, even though it was not actual write-off, you have taken a expense hit into your income statement because the revenue was generated in year one. Now in year two, when there is an actual write-off, you are not supposed to debit the income statement again. Why? Because in year two, there is no corresponding revenue generated. Revenue was generated in year one. So instead, you use a provision account or the allowance account which you have created. So on 12/31 last year, you anticipated that $2,500 will not be paid. Now actually customer is not paying $2,500. So you are now closing your contra asset. Contra asset initially had a credit balance of 2,500. Now you have to close that particular account. So you will debit the allowance for doubtful debt. And this is important entry. So what we are saying, actual write-off is routed through allowance account. Clear with the 3rd February entry?
Allowance. How are we explaining the debit for allowance for doubtful account?
चलिए, हाउ आई एक्सप्लेन द डेबिट, उससे पहले आप एक्सट्रैक्ट ऑफ बैलेंस शीट, आप टी शेप का अकाउंट बनाओ फॉर अकाउंट्स रिसीवेबल, टी शेप का अकाउंट बनाओ फॉर अलाउंस फॉर डाउटफुल डेट्स फॉर 1231, दोनों के आप टी शेप अकाउंट्स बनाओ. Okay, accounts receivable is okay. What about allowance for doubtful debt? Now just hold on here. Your allowance for doubtful debt, you have a credit side 2500. If you want to close this account anytime in future, what you have to do? You have to debit the allowance.
Yes.
Yes, so that is why on 3rd of February you debit the allowance for doubtful debts. Clear? जब भी journal entries ना समझ में आए, draw a T-shape account, check what is the balance, and if you want to close the account, do you need to do a debit or do you need to do a credit? एक और check लेते हैं. Your accounts receivable had a 10,000 balance. Now on 3rd of February, when you want to close, what you will do? You will credit the accounts receivable. Clear है 3rd Feb का entry अभी?
How do I explain the debit entry in A equals to C plus L?
Sorry, debit entry in?
A equals to C plus L.
आप बताओ.
Asset is asset is not increasing, but we are debiting.
Asset is increasing, right? 2500 was your contra asset. It was a negative asset. Now negative asset is getting closed off. That means either negative asset is going up or sorry, negative asset is going down, or you can say it's going, or you can say it's a positive impact. Just think like this. Key allowance for doubtful debt is your contra asset. Now contra asset, when you do a credit to a asset, it goes down. So what was a is equal to C plus L 1231 में लिखो पहले. What is the impact of a is equal to C plus L?
So
1231 L column में लिखो what is a is equal to C plus L effect. Asset decrease, and what is happening with the bad debt? Your equity decrease.
yes.
Now let's say when you get a cash in, cash is your asset. Asset has a debit balance. If you increase the cash, asset increase. What happens with accounts receivable? It's an asset. When you credit the asset, it decrease. Now what happens with your allowance for doubtful debt? It's your contra asset. When you debit, it also increases. So contra asset increases. ऊपर का जो entry था, that's where contra asset decreased. So now contra asset increased when you debit the asset. Or other way you can say it's a asset side. When you debit, asset increases. सो ऊपर की एंट्री में 1231 में क्या था, एसेट वाज डिक्रीजिंग, योर अकाउंट्स रिसीवेबल वाज डिक्रीजिंग. नाउ you are debiting the asset, it means your asset is increasing. That is not the ideal way to look at. Ideal way to look at is your contra asset is getting squared off.
So
Contra asset का नेगेटिव
basic
वैल्यू
like
होता है,
so
बेसिकली
basic
contra asset का नेगेटिव वैल्यू होता है, the negative asset is now getting squared off, which means a positive impact.
squared off means closed off.
क्लोज्ड ऑफ, यस, आपका 2500 का. सो एक और लेजर पोस्टिंग करो टी शेप में, व्हेन यू राइट ऑफ द ऑन 3rd of February का लेजर पोस्टिंग होगा.
Hmm. Um, um, that I would debit accounts receivable 2500.
एग्जैक्टली तो आपका अब जो अलाउंस फॉर डाउटफुल डेट है वो जीरो हो गया. सो नाउ कैन आई से योर कॉन्ट्रा एसेट अकाउंट इज क्लोज्ड ऑफ. तो जो पहले नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रा एसेट थी, वो नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रा एसेट अब चली गई बुक्स में से, इट्स जीरो आउट. सो
Yes.
नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रा एसेट अगर जीरो आउट होती है, इट मींस इट्स स्क्वायर्ड ऑफ. दैट मींस अ पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट ऑन द एसेट.
Okay.
ठीक है, यहाँ तक क्लियर है 3rd February तक की एंट्रीज.
Yes.
चलिए, नाउ यू थिंक 6 जून को जब पैसा आता है, सो व्हाट इज द इम्पैक्ट. सो आइडियली आपने जो राइट ऑफ किया है वो एंट्री आपको एग्जैक्टली रिवर्स आउट करनी है. सो आपने पहले असेट अकाउंट्स रिसीवेबल राइट ऑफ किया था $2500 का, तो आप वापस रिक्रिएट करोगे. और आपने राइट ऑफ कहाँ से किया था, अलाउंस से किया था. सो यू विल अगेन क्रेडिट योर अलाउंस, because this account was used to square off the accounts receivable. Now it's 20. और आपको जब पैसा मिलेगा, so what is the entry, cash account debited to accounts receivable.
Here, how I would explain this, my asset is decreasing.
Your asset is not decreasing. आपने जब आप subsequently collect करते हो अमाउंट, तो जो आपने राइट ऑफ कर दिया था वो राइट ऑफ को आपको रिवर्स आउट करना पड़ेगा. यू हैव टू रिवर्स द रिटर्न ऑफ एंट्री. So you are just reversing the entry which you used to write off your accounts receivable.
So the allowance for doubtful account will not be closed.
सो उसका क्या होता है, आई टेल यू. पहले आप एंट्री लिखो, डेबिट कैश अकाउंट टू क्रेडिट एआर अकाउंट. नाउ आई एम टेलिंग यू प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में क्या होता है. अलाउंस फॉर डाउटफुल अकाउंट इज नॉट ओनली फॉर वन कस्टमर, इट्स अ जनरल रिजर्व. इट्स अ काइंड ऑफ अक्रॉस 1 million कस्टमर, थाउजेंड्स ऑफ कस्टमर. नाउ फॉर एग्जांपल, आपके आपका एक बिजनेस था एंड यू ओनली हैड अ वन कस्टमर. Now, what will happen on 12/31 year 2? You will see your accounts receivable are zero, because 7,500 is collected, 2,500 is also collected. So your accounts receivable is zero. So by end of year 2, which is 12/31, what is the provision required? You don't require any provision. What is the provision balance you have? You have a provision balance of 2,500. So ultimately, you are going to reverse the bad debt provision on 12/31. So let's build this further. लिखो एक और entry. Company is shutting down the business and no more transactions in year 2. So what is your AR balance on 12/31 and what is your allowance balance on 12/31 year 2? अब टी शेप का आपने जो लेजर पोस्टिंग किया था उसको थोड़ा आगे बढ़ाओ एंड ईयर 2 के मुझे क्लोजिंग बैलेंसेस बताओ, अकाउंट्स रिसीवेबल के और अलाउंस के. So what is your accounts receivable balance? क्या
10,000.
आपने 7,500 का लेजर पोस्टिंग नहीं किया आपने? द कैश कलेक्टेड ऑन 3rd of February.
Mm, Uh, for allowance for doubtful account, did I already do it?
नहीं, आपके अकाउंट्स रिसीवेबल का पोस्टिंग मेरे को समझाओ. फर्स्ट एंट्री $10,000, दैट इज योर सेल्स. AR डेबिट टू डेफर्ड रेवेन्यू. उसके बाद आपने 2,500 का एंट्री किया फॉर योर राइट ऑफ. Then you collected 7,500 cash. Where is that entry in your T-shape account?
Is it okay now?
So now what is happening on year two? You have 12,500 accounts receivable on debit side, on credit side. So accounts receivable balance is zero. Now, and what is the balance in your allowance account? Allowance account has a balance of 2,500. So now tell me one thing. If on 12/31 year two, if you have zero accounts receivable, do you need any bad debt provision for the non-collectible estimates?
No.
So can we say the allowance which you have of 2,500 is no longer required and you have to reverse the allowance now?
Yes.
So on 12/31 you will post one more entry which is debit allowance, credit bad debt expense. Now my question to you, why credit bad debt expense? And which two concepts we have already studied are triggered here? Think through 5 minutes, and I need answer why we credit bad debt expense at the end of year two.
Mm. Bad debt expense would be a change in estimate. So
Exactly,
we
it's a
we
change
have
in
to do it.
estimate. So आपने year one में estimate किया था कि 2,500 will be the bad debt, but actually customer paid entire $10,000, so your estimate was wrong. But change in accounting estimate, you don't do retrospective impact, you do a prospective impact. So in year two, you change your estimate. So rather than changing the year one retained earnings, what you do, you straight away adjust that into year two. And by posting the entry debit allowance, credit bad debt expense, ultimately your allowance account will also become zero. So you have a zero accounts receivable, you have a zero allowance balance. Clear with the entire example? It's a good example. इसको save कर लो. It will help you to understand the entire AR concept. Clear है?
Yes.
चलिए, open your Word document. Let's see through कि हमने क्या क्या किया था. अब स्क्रीन शेयर कीजिए और आपका वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट ओपन कर दीजिए. ओके, लेट्स गो विथ एग्जांपल नंबर 4. ओवर टू यू. सॉल्यूशन मत देखना, ट्राई टू रिजॉल्व फर्स्ट ऑन योर ओन. यूज गूगल शीट इफ यू वांट, and then we'll match the answers.
What does this line mean? TEFCO estimates the loss rates to decrease by 20% in each age bucket.
Estimate loss to be decreased. So yesterday we understand your bad debt provision percentage are your historical trend
So I
plus or
will.
minus any future anticipated increase or decrease. So we, if you remember, we discussed the historically your customer don't pay 5%, but this year there is COVID also. So you think you need to increase your provision by 2 more%. So the future looking forecast can be adjusted to the historical information. So it can be increase or it can be decrease. आपको क्वेश्चन में क्या दिया है? डीएफ कंपनी एक्सपेक्ट्स अ इम्प्रूवमेंट इन द इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन. So if economic condition improves, it means your bad debt chances will go down. So from the historical trend, you estimate 20% will be still a better. So the historical rates ka only 80% you have to consider as the bad debt percentages.
uh,
So you need to prepare an entry for allowance for year one, and then there is a scenario number two. So first, let's focus on point number one.
3920 is the extra amount that we need to add.
No, I
So
don't know the answer. तो मुझे नहीं पता. आप एक बार पहले solution Google Sheet में लिख लो. Then we'll tally if matches. We will not discuss. If it doesn't matches, then हम उसमें deep में जाते हैं.
for the first one, it matches.
First one matches. चलिए बढ़िया है. Let's come to the second one. Second scenario में क्या बोला है? That assume that you already have a balance of $50,000 in your allowance account. Then in that situation, what is the entry required at the end of year one? So instead of 40,000 balance, now you have a 50,000 balance in your opening allowance account.
Then
Yes. What is the provision you required at the end of year one? So you
uh,
required a provision of 43,920. You already have 50,000. So can I say now it's a
2080.
reversal of your allowance? You need to
So,
change your estimate now. You only require a provision of 43,000. You already have a provision of 50,000 in your ledger. So 7,000 provision needs a reversal.
yes, for credit, would it be for credit it would be accounts receivable or better
आपने अभी
accounts
मास्टर एग्जांपल किया उसमें क्या किया था when there is a change in
accounts
estimate.
receivable. Change,
No, I'm not able to hear you.
change in estimate will reverse bad debt expense.
Exactly the same entry. Allowance account debit to bad debt expense credit. देख लो solution में match हो रहा है. If not, then solution is wrong. So
It matches.
allowance debit to bad debt expense credit. ठीक है, matches second also.
Yes.
चलिए example number 5. It's a good question. Think through 5 minutes. थोड़े से लॉजिक सबको लगाने पड़ेंगे.
For the first one, it would be debit allowance for doubtful account and credit accounts receivable.
What amount?
16,000.
Exactly. Why 16,000? Because that's the customer that is going into the bankruptcy. चलिए मूव कीजिए आगे. Now on 31st of December, you have a balance of $10,000. So एक बार टी शेप का अकाउंट बनाइए. You had unadjusted balance of 10,000. Then 16,000 का आपने एक राइट ऑफ अभी अभी पोस्ट किया है. And closing balance you required is 15,850. So how much provision you want and what will be the amount?
250.
Can you show me T-shape ledger account? I'm not able to see that screen. So आपने क्या किया? You have a 10,000 is the opening balance. 16,000 आपने. So how 250? मुझे फॉर्मूला जरा डेबिट इक्वल टू क्रेडिट मैच कराओ एक बार. 250 कैसे निकला?
16,000 minus 15,850. Oh, 150.
वापस करो कैलकुलेशन।
वापस क्या चीज
What is 16,000 and 15,000? Is it a debit side or a credit side?
वापस
150 को एक बार डिलीट करो। So what is the total of the debit side?
16,000.
और तो 15,000 क्या है आपका?
15,850 is the closing balance I want.
हाँ, तो नीचे ग्रैंड टोटल में क्या जाएगा? जब आप टी शेप को क्लोज करोगे अल्टीमेटली आप टोटल्स करोगे, राइट?
31,850.
So you want 31,850 both the sides. What you have on the credit side?
Then 21,850.
21,850। क्रेडिट साइड डिफरेंस आ रहा है, इट्स अलाउंस अकाउंट। इसका मतलब क्या होता है?
That the balance would be on the debit side.
आपका डिफरेंस कौन से साइड आया, डेबिट साइड या क्रेडिट साइड?
Uh, debit side.
कैसे दिखाओ, कहाँ पर, कौन से सेल में, कहाँ डिफरेंस है, दिखाओ अभी।
No, the
व्हाट इज 21,850? दैट इज माय क्वेश्चन।
so the balance, the amount uh,
कौन
that
सा
we need
अमाउंट?
to get that we need to get 15,850.
हाँ, तो डिफरेंस डेबिट साइड है कि क्रेडिट साइड है?
बैलेंस तो डेबिट साइड में चाहिए।
डिफरेंस कौन सी साइड पे है? 21,850 को डिलीट करो। तो अभी डिफरेंस डेबिट साइड पे है या डिफरेंस क्रेडिट साइड पे है?
तो,
सिंपल क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा हूँ। आपका डेबिट साइड का टोटल है 31,000, क्रेडिट साइड का टोटल अभी 10,000 है, आपको 31,000 चाहिए। तो डिफरेंस
yes,
डेबिट साइड पे है या डिफरेंस क्रेडिट साइड पे है?
credit,
अगेन डिफरेंस डेबिट साइड पे है या क्रेडिट साइड पे है?
credit,
कितना डिफरेंस है?
21,850.
तो लिखो वहां पर डिफरेंस अमाउंट विच इज ऑन क्रेडिट साइड 21,850। अब ये कौन सा अकाउंट है?
Allowance for doubtful account,
अलाउंस फॉर डाउटफुल डेट का क्या बैलेंस होता है, डेबिट या क्रेडिट?
credit,
सो क्रेडिट बैलेंस होता है। नाउ थिंक ए इज इक्वल टू सी प्लस एल। समथिंग हैज अ क्रेडिट बैलेंस, आपका डिफरेंस क्रेडिट साइड पे बना है, तो इसका इंटरप्रिटेशन क्या होगा? आपका अलाउंस इंक्रीज हो रहा है या अलाउंस डिक्रीज हो रहा है?
increase
इंक्रीज अलाउंस कब होता है?
when we have
व्हेन यू एस्टिमेट
whenever,
मोर बैड डेट एक्सपेंस।
yes,
तो अब आप वापिस आओ क्वेश्चन पे। क्वेश्चन पे क्या पूछा है कि व्हाट इज द अमाउंट ऑफ बैड डेट एक्सपेंस दैट शुड बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड इन इन दिसंबर पीरियड। वापिस आओ आपके वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट वाले स्क्रीन पे एंड लेट्स सी व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन। कैलकुलेट द एडजस्टमेंट रिक्वायर्ड for the expected credit loss. That means what is the adjustment required for bad debt expense balance, and record the entry. So एक बार check करो solution number 2. Have they put a entry bad debt expense debit 21,850 to allowance for bad debt 21,850? Clear है?
yes.
second entry
What is plus 6,000?
कहाँ पर है प्लस 6,000?
15,850 plus
क्यों
6,000.
देख रहे हो? आपने टी शेप अकाउंट बनाया, आपका अमाउंट मैच कर गया। योर कॉन्सेप्ट्स आर क्लियर। व्हाई यू वांट टू गेट कंफ्यूज टू अंडरस्टैंड उन्होंने कैसे किया है? उन्होंने जैसे भी किया हो क्या फर्क पड़ता है, आपका आंसर मैच हो गया। योर कॉन्सेप्ट्स आर क्लियर।
Yeah.
ठीक है, लेट्स रीड थर्ड क्वेश्चन। ऊपर
This
जाओ,
is
क्वेश्चन पढ़ो. Now, what is
collection of
happening
money.
in year two? Boston company has determined so one of the customer whose account balance that was deemed uncollectible was able to pay $5,000 to the company. The payment is received. तो आपने एक राइट ऑफ है जो आपने राइट ऑफ कर दिया था ईयर वन में, वो आपको सब्सिक्वेंट कलेक्शन आया ईयर टू में. सो अगेन मास्टर एग्जांपल देखो, व्हाट हैपेंस व्हेन यू रिकवर अ बैड डेट ऑलरेडी रिटन ऑफ.
Covered accounts receivable credit uh, allowance for doubtful accounts.
एंड सेकंड एंट्री कैश अकाउंट टू एआर अकाउंट.
Debit cash credit accounts
चेक
receivable.
कर लो एंट्रीज. एआर डेबिट टू अलाउंस, सेकंड कैश टू अकाउंट्स रिसीवेबल. ठीक है.
Yeah.
चलिए, लेट्स गो टू सेक्शन नंबर टू, सब लेजर टू जनरल लेजर. माय फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू, व्हाट इज सब लेजर एंड व्हाट इज जनरल लेजर?
General subledger is the accounts and the main ledger.
थोड़ा जोर से बोलो भाई, आई एम नॉट दैट गुड टू हियर दिस वॉइस.
Sub ledger are the accounts in the main ledger.
सब लेजर आर द अकाउंट
In the main ledger,
इन द मेन लेजर मतलब मैं नहीं समझा, थोड़ा इलेबोरेट करो.
I don't know.
ग्रेजुएशन में कौन सा कोर्स किया है आपने?
BBA,
आया था ये कॉन्सेप्ट?
not sub ledger.
या आया था, नहीं पढ़ा, याद नहीं है?
Are you calling the so if we have the T accounts for different companies, are they called sub ledger?
मैं तो सिंपल सवाल कर रहा हूँ, व्हाट इज सब लेजर.
I don't know.
चलिए, कम टू गूगल शीट. मुझे आप पूरी इवेंट समझाओ, सोर्स टू फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट, हाउ एंटायर ट्रांजैक्शन का वर्कफ्लो कैसे चलता है. सो ड्रॉ अ वन प्रोसेस चार्ट, प्रोसेस फ्लो, स्टेप्स, कुछ भी बोल लो. यू हैव अ सोर्स डॉक्यूमेंट, वहां से फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स कैसे बनते हैं. So let's say source document is your contract, sales contract with customer. यहां से मुझे आप पूरी जर्नी बताओ, हाउ बैलेंस शीट इज प्रिपेयर्ड. सीधा टी अकाउंट में चीजें चली जाएगी, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट टी अकाउंट में कैसे जाता है मुझे ड्रॉ करके दिखाओ.
Uh,
ड्रॉ वन टी शेप और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का पोस्टिंग करके दिखाओ.
what do you mean? Cash.
मैं भी नहीं समझा आपने जो लिखा है. टी अकाउंट से ट्रायल बैलेंस से फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट. चलो, मेरे पास एक सेल्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, मैं आपको पीडीएफ भेजता हूँ, मुझे आप सीधा फाइनेंशियल्स बना के दिखाओ, कैसे बनेगा पीडीएफ से फाइनेंशियल.
आप एंट्री करेंगे पहले
सो वेयर इज
ट्रायल
दैट
बैलेंस.
स्टेप?
तो won't that entry be in the T account?
व्हाट इज डिफरेंस बिटवीन एंट्री एंड द टी अकाउंट?
Uh, you make a trial balance.
सोचो, आई विल बी बैक इन 2 मिनट्स. ट्राई एंड फिगर इट आउट कि क्या होता है. What is the difference between journal entry and T accounts?
No,
चलिए.
journal entry आप पोस्ट करेंगे ट्रायल बैलेंस पे देन नहीं नहीं टी अकाउंट पे
ट्रायल बैलेंस में कभी पोस्टिंग नहीं होता है.
टी अकाउंट पे
ट्रायल बैलेंस इज द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट, इट्स नॉट द अकाउंट. चलो मैं
टी
आपको बता
अकाउंट
देता हूँ स्ट्रेट अवे. दिस इज द ट्रांजैक्शन फ्लो. We have a source document. Let's say it's a contract.
वेयर आर यू राइटिंग
I'm writing in transaction flow tab. So suppose there is a source document and let's say there is a contract. Contract allows you to raise the invoice. So when you raise the invoice, your customer account is debited and your deferred revenue is credited. So this is called a journal entry. So when you raise the invoice, customer account is debited, deferred revenue is credited. So this is your event number one. At this event, system passes a journal entry. Now you can have, let's say, a 500 customers. So let's say customer A, customer B, customer C, customer D, customer E, and so on. You have a 500 customers and you have a 500 journal entry when you raise the invoices. So when these journal entries are recorded at customer level, all the ledger posting happens. So the step number two is a ledger posting. Now ledger posting happens two ways. Number one, ledger posting at customer level. So first entry is posted for customer A, AR accounts receivable debit to deferred revenue credit. Customer B, accounts receivable debit deferred revenue credit. Customer C, accounts receivable debit deferred revenue credit. So when the entries are posted at a customer level, it is called a sub ledger accounting. Now let's say you have done a 500 account posting, customer A $100, customer B $200, customer C $250, customer D $10, customer E $1100. The grand total of your all 500 customer is, let's say, $50,000. So the total of the customer level balance, this moves to your accounts receivable head in balance sheet. So this is called a general ledger. So I can say that sub ledger is a subsidiary accounts of my general ledger. Always my total of sum total of my subsidiary accounts has to match my general ledger. So my I if I open my general ledger, I can see a single balance of $50,000. But if I want to see the balance, that what is the balance of A, what is the balance of B, what is the balance of P, what is the balance of Z, then I have to open a subsidiary ledger accounts, which is at a customer level. Now, the third step, the general ledger are closed at a year end and they are reflected in trial balance. And then the last step, the trial balance is converted into P&L, your balance sheet, your cash flow, your notes to accounts, your changes in equity, which is basically your set of financial statement. So this is how the journey starts. Now this is from the sales point of view. Let's think from the purchase point of view. You have a purchase contract. Then you get the bills from the supplier. Your entry is expense account debited to accounts payable. Now accounts payable, let's say you have a 500 vendors. So vendor A, vendor B, vendor C, vendor D. If you are doing the accounting at a vendor level, it is called a sub ledger accounting at a vendor level. The total of your all accounts payable at all the vendors, they ties and they go to a main head in the balance sheet, which is accounts payable. So it's called a general ledger accounts payable. Let's say you have a 500 vendors, your total is $75,000. If you want to deep dive that what is the value of my supplier A, what is the value of my supplier B, what is the value of my supplier C, so it is a sub ledger level accounts payable. Then general ledger are closed at your end, the balances goes to the trial balance, and from trial balance you prepare balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement, notes to accounts. What is the thumb rule? The subtotal of your subsidiary ledger has to match to your general ledger. If it is not matching, then there is some problem in your accounting. Some entries are missed and corrections are required. Clear with the transaction flow, see how a sub ledger accounting works.
Yes.
चलिए आ जाइए आपके वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट पे. पहले एग्जांपल देखते हैं, then we'll go to a theory part. आप स्क्रीन शेयर कर रहे हो, so just make sure you have a right screen. चलिए come down. So you can have a various sub ledger. You can have a trade receivable, you can have accounts payable, you can have an inventory. Ultimately, it has to match. So let's see, there is an example now. This is a self-explanatory example, but एक बार देख लेते हैं. So in the sub ledger below, the trade receivable beginning balance were $15,000. Now, if you see there is a customer name ABC Goods. So this is the accounting at customer level. So it is called a sub ledger accounting. Your opening balance was $15,000, which includes two invoices, 11,400 and 3,600. Then during the period, sorry, then you are given ending balance of 8,900. So that is your ending balance. Now, during the year, certain transactions happen. Let's say on 14th of January, you have done a sale of $4,000. So your balance further increases. Why? Accounts receivable is an asset. When you do a more sales, your asset goes up. So you debit your accounts receivable. On 23rd of January, you again did a sale. So 3,500 again increased your balance. On 28th of January, you received the payment of 19,000. So it reduces the balance of your trade receivable or account receivable. And then again, you did a one credit sale of 5,400. So all the transactions ultimately gave you a balance of 8,900. Now this 8,900 is a balance of one customer. You can have 1,000 customer, and all the sum total of your 1,000 customer will go to a general ledger, which is your accounts receivable. And in the balance sheet, you will not see 1,000 accounts receivable. You will see a one accounts receivable, which is a sum total of your all 1,000 customers. Clear with the concept?
Yes.
ऊपर आ जाओ, थियरी एक बार क्विकली स्क्रॉल थ्रू कर लो, उसमें कोई भी पॉइंट में डाउट हो तो एक बार पूछ लो.
Fine.
ठीक है, come to Google Sheet. You have a one. I think you have a two examples to solve. So that is your homework. I'm giving you a time back today. So दोनों AR का solution कर लेना. And with this, we again.
For the AI, what do you want me to do? I I sat today, but I didn't understand what I have to do.
सो आप शीट पे आओ, एआर की शीट पे. यू हैव अ टू एग्जांपल्स, स्क्रीनशॉट पे उसके सॉल्यूशंस है. सो फर्स्ट ट्राई टू डू सॉल्यूशन ऑन योर ओन एंड देन मैच विद द स्क्रीनशॉट वेदर इट्स टैलिंग और नॉट. अगर टैली नहीं करता देन वी अगेन नीड अ डिस्कशन देयर.
Okay.
ठीक है, एक बार क्लियर हो जाओ एआर पे एंड देन टुमारो वी विल स्टार्ट विद द इन्वेंटरी. We may not be able to finish inventory fully tomorrow. So for this week's exam point of view, what we will do, we will keep FAR 1 full, FAR 2 full, and FAR 3 में cash and accounts receivable. Inventory we will cover in the exam next week.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.